Morning.
Hi, Greg. Good morning.
Nice to
How's
see
your
you.
morning going?
I've got coffee, it's all right.
Oh,
Hey,
so
all
it's
is
a
good.
great morning.
How are you ladies?
Doing pretty good. A little bit sleepy, but you know, it'll wear off.
At least it's not Monday.
You know, look at the bright side of things.
Right, so good to see you again. And
Pleasure.
just as a refresher, my name is Sydney Woodman.
And I'm Addie McCarthy, and as you know, we're both agents of All American.
Indeed.
And Brett, I know last time we spoke, how's the family doing? I know you had some events coming up with your daughter. How did that go?
Awesome. So she is 4 going on 24. It's
The
ridiculous,
sass,
actually.
right? It's the sassiness.
You know, it really is, and she's starting to act like a teenager.
Oh boy.
Yeah, she's 4. She's 4. And the other day, I just kind of look at her, and you know, we had a little family drama recently, a death in the family, and I just kind of looked at her. Thank you. And you know, I said to her, you know, Alexandra, I love you. And she goes, why do you have to say that? And then I turned around the other day, I was looking at her. She's in her car seat in the back of the car. And I turn around, and she's kind of smiling, you know, singing a song. And she sees me looking at her, and she goes,
Oh yeah, here it comes.
I'm like, yeah, I'm in for it.
The
Oh, no.
teens will be fun.
I was the same way. I was an only child myself, and I definitely gave my parents plenty of sass to handle. But we actually had a whole potluck barbecue with All American last week. And it really reminded me of your family, and as Sydney was filling me in all on your daughter and everything. And it's really nice to come into this meeting knowing that you share the same family-oriented values as All American does.
Absolutely, it's important. Yeah, you need to be human, right?
Exactly.
So,
No, so Brett, just to go over what we're going to go through today, is during our last meeting, I know we had a couple risk exposures that we identified. So what we're going to do is we did find some policies for you to go through, and then also some risk management techniques that we'll uncover. And then by the end of this meeting, we'll decide if our partnership will bring value to you at your company and hopefully get IQL, those risk exposures taken care of or mitigate them the best that we can. Does that sound good?
sounds good. One thing I'd also love to learn about is you mentioned value. You know, when we're talking to insurance vendors, obviously there's a finite marketplace, but I'd love to learn more about some of the value added you might be able to bring.
Value added. Of course.
And for the record, I love the non-paper clutter.
Oh, of
Oh,
course.
yes.
Got to keep it
I'm
organized.
an iPad girl through and through.
iOS.
Love it.
My wife's a Droid woman, and
How could you marry such a woman?
I know, right?
Are you ready to uncover some of the needs we went through during our last meeting?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Sydney's giving me a whole recap of your first meeting, and just to give you a little run through of what we're going to go through, I'm going to focus on more insurance-based policies, probably bore you a little bit to death, and hopefully Sydney should bring you back alive. So I'm first going to talk about the Panama City headquarters, and with that, I know you mentioned supply chain was a big, worry for you guys, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can ensure that more,
Awesome.
talk a little bit about weather exposures and utility dependence.
And then second, Brett, risk management techniques. I'll be covering more how we can mitigate those risk exposures before the claims actually occur.
Beautiful.
I know a big thing was you are very into third-party vendors. You have a lot of responsibilities carried on that third party to finish out your final product at IQL, and we want to make sure that that process is thorough before it's even sent out for you.
Great. Yeah, we do have some dependencies. So.
Of course. And does this sound good, or is there anything you would like to add for our meeting today besides the value added?
Let's see what you got.
Okay.
Perfect. So just a little bit about credibility, All-American. Brett, I know last time we spoke, you were a little concerned about my age and credibility. So being a young person, what I did was I went ahead and brought another young person to the meeting today.
I love the energy.
Just to bring some comfort. This is a customer review slide that we put together for you, as well as testimonials. These are our current clients that we hold right now, and not only do I encourage you to reach out to them, but they are willing and so excited to talk to you. Just any question you may have that you may not want to ask us about the company, but this is for you. And also, Abby and I are certified risk managers and certified insurance counselors, which means
Wonderful.
we have gone through extensive coursework to be where we are today, and also All-American would not put us in front of you if we were not fully trained and ready to take this on.
Great.
And then going into All American, I know Sydney touched on it, but I just want to give you a little bit of a recap again. We've been in the business for 36 years, and just like yourself, we're very family oriented. It's a family owned company. And the biggest point that I want to stress to you is that All American isn't like your average agency. We're going to be there for you through and through. I know that you talked to Sydney about your current agent. You meet that one time a year, a month before your renewal, sign the documents, slide the check.
Very mechanical.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. But as you can hopefully see, we want to bring a lot more lively interaction and have at least quarterly meetings because as growth is such a big and important factor for you guys, we want to make sure we're up to date with all things deal.
Great.
So does that sound all good?
It does. Yeah, that's really something I'm looking for. Is nothing overbearing, but
Mhm.
definitely I want to make sure that I and my team check in with, whoever our vendor becomes their team, so on a periodic basis.
Mhm.
Make sure we're reviewing things, and that's kind of what it's become. When I mentioned mechanical, is the renewal just looks the same each year. It's just here's the same paperwork, boom, boom, boom. But what's really going on? What's changed? And as we grow, I think it's important that we talk about the business some more, rather than just here's the stack of papers, send it back.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Exactly, and that's with All American. We want this to be a conversation, both of us talking and getting ideas exchanged, because that's ultimately how we're going to cover you the best, and not only be your agents, but your partners as well. So are you ready to just jump on into it?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go. So talking about your Panama City headquarters, what I've gathered is it's not only your hub for everything, but it also includes your sole manufacturing site. Is that still correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a pretty important place.
It is.
Yeah.
It's kind of the nerve center, if you will.
Yeah. So today I want to discuss a pretty standard policy to start us off with, one that you already have, but go ahead and go the extra mile and include some endorsements that I think might be useful to cover the policy. Would you think that's a good thing?
You tell me.
Okay, well, hopefully you'll tell me afterwards. But so I want to talk about the standard business income and extra expense, which is a mouthful, so I'm going to call it the BIEE. Feel free to stop me
Lots
if
of
you
letters.
start to get confused with the acronyms. But basically the business income and extra expense policy is going to cover for any lost income or cover any operating expenses if your business is forced to shut down due to a variety of perils. For instance, Panama City, as we know, is in the armpit of Florida, that little sweet spot for hurricanes. Do you have a plan in place if, per se, IQL is unfortunately leveled?
Well, let me first say I'm waiting for you to actually then next call it Lower Alabama. But,
Hey, just wait, I'll get there.
actually, a big concern I had there is, I've known some folks, and thank goodness it didn't happen to us and Michael or anything like that. But where like a power pole goes down like 2 miles away, and then the operations without power can't do anything, and there's somehow no coverage. But the person I'm thinking of had this income coverage. Is that something we can deal with?
I'm so glad you brought that up, and on the side, I'm going to touch on the utility services endorsement. It's like you're putting the words in my mouth. But so I'm going to touch on that if you don't mind, just pivoting it for a little bit.
Okay, sure.
But does that clarify your concern for now? We will touch on it.
Oh yeah, you basically just said we got that. So
Beautiful. So talking about that, the standard policy is going to replace that revenue and income, and its entire purpose is to take that stress off your shoulder. I know you talked about your neighbors, they had that policy, but it's easy for you to not have it. And so it's going to take that off, and it's also going to serve as a lifeline for you in the event of a disaster.
great.
But with All American, we want to go that step above and beyond and talking about the utility services endorsement. So let me paint this picture for you. It's that same thing that you described. IQL, hurricane comes through, it's completely undamaged, which means the business income and extra expense policy hasn't been enacted. But the power line 2 miles down the road fell over, and you're without power. And IQL can't operate without power now, can it?
Oh no, we're talking sheet metal. Can't talk this morning. Too much coffee now. Sheet metal shop, and all of our operations. So
Exactly.
yeah.
It's detrimental, but this policy is going to enact that business income and extra expense, so it's going to continue to pay all the income that you'd be losing over that time period while the Panama City goes ahead and restores power, and also helps with operating expenses and any damages that might need to be rebuilt back up. So
Great.
could you see how that policy could be helpful for your company?
That's why I asked about it.
Exactly. And then going on to the secondary endorsement is a dependent properties endorsement. And Sydney's going to go ahead and touch more on risk management techniques with using third-party vendors, but I wanted to discuss some insurance-related ways to mitigate the risk. So with using the third-party vendors, you're relying on them a lot, and with that, especially with COVID and everything, we've had a lot of supply chain issues.
Just a few.
Just a few. Oh, I know. But when they're unable to get you your products, you're unable to complete any operations, correct?
It's a contractual problem. If we're
Right.
on a delivery deadline, we need to be able to deliver.
And with that, this policy would go ahead and enact that same business income and extra expense, providing you that income that you need and operating expenses, like continuing to pay your employees and continue to keep your staff. And with that, we have an additional suggestion, and I know Sydney had touched upon it on your first meeting, of starting to use a secondary supplier. We're by no means saying to kick your primary supplier out the door, but we'd like to get our foot in the door with another supplier. So in the event of a supply chain emergency with your primary supplier, the secondary supplier already knows your name, already knows your business. They're like, oh yeah, we know Brett, we know IQL, we can pump out some more pieces for him, and you're able to continue operating at a faster pace and get those products that all your customers so desperately want.
I suppose, as the saying goes, those who fail to prepare to fail.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So do you see how this program itself and those endorsements could possibly help your company?
I do. I have one question on the supply chain thing. That income coverage or whatever, is that if they're shut down because of like a hurricane or a fire or something, or could that also hedge against like supply chain labor issues, things like that?
So can you clarify exactly?
Sure. Let's say I've got a supplier who has a fire at a facility and can't get me a piece of equipment, a component. It sounds like that's probably covered. What if they just are having issues getting it from a supplier that they need to put their portion of this product together, or they have a labor shortage? Is there a way to hedge against that?
So it's going to handle all of your dependence on these third-party vendors. It's not necessarily a payroll based on their issues. It could be a fire, it could be labor shortages, as you discussed. Okay. So it's going to cover all of your dependence on them. It's basically saying they can't get it to you. How can we help you from there on? It's not worrying about how their issue started. Does that confirm and clarify your issue?
It does. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Now, so we went over some policies, Brett. Now we're going to go over ways to mitigate risks from within IQL to potentially never eliminate risk, but lower them so that the claims never occur. And the first thing I want to reiterate is the dependence on your third parties. And now, that is a heavy hitter. To me, that sounds like all your eggs in one basket, right?
I can see how you could interpret it that way.
Yeah, so as your agent, as we want to be your partners, Brett, I'm going to be honest with you, and that does make me a little bit nervous. I want to make sure that these people are trusted because your ultimate goal is to grow. So one thing that we would do in the risk management technique portion of this is to ensure a full risk transfer, which means that we would sit with you as your agents, and we would go through the contracts with you and make sure that the liability is fully transferred to that third party.
There's my value added.
Exactly. The value of that is from point A to point B, you are fully out of control on what is happening to your product. So this would take the stress off of your shoulders and really help you sleep at night because, as I mentioned, point A to point B, that's not you, that's on them to fulfill. So I want to make sure that you feel better about that, and we can do that from inside right at IQL.
We do have some contractual controls, and of course everything's been reviewed by our attorney, but I know things change, and to have a fresh set of eyes on it, and every time the legislature meets, they change something, screw something up.
Exactly. So we want to be there to help you catch those changes. And second thing we want to implement is certain vendor requirements. So what this is that here at All American, we would take a consultative approach with you. And as she mentioned, getting your foot in the door with another vendor, we want to make sure that when you're signing these contracts, Brett, what this would do is make sure that they're meeting your qualifications. Okay. And also, so we're going to help you ask those good questions. Like, for example, we would see if they have an all-risk all-risk land cargo coverage. What that would do for you is say your lighting is getting into the truck. Okay, once that truck leaves IQL, if it's damaged, we have to make sure that they are adequately insured to pay for your financial losses because your lighting is one of a kind, right? You can't just go pull it off a shelf. So we want to make sure
it's all custom built.
Exactly. So those are special pieces. We want to make sure that if they're damaged, that's one less worry off of your shoulders because you've got to work on making a brand new one for your customer. And do you see how that could add value to your company?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to hedge against those things.
Of course, and speaking of hedging against those things, Brett, we want to take the extra mile for you. I told you I want to go above and beyond for you, so this is it. Last thing we want to implement just in the quality control area is a quality control program.
Okay.
Now, what this would do is there's a pre-production, inline, and final quality control program. What this does is ensure the quality of your lighting and improve it if needed. So, for
How
example,
much does it cost?
can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, quality control program, I'm sure there's costs involved in the implementation.
Of course, so that is something that we would sit down with you because it does take training your employees. But I will say that that cost is well worth it because they would have a guideline, a checklist to go through to make sure that everything is set in place before it's even shipped out to the company or in the installation process. You ever order a package from UPS?
All the time.
Of course, you have to sign at the very end to make sure that it's in your possession. That's something similar to what we would be doing so that you know that your customer signed and received your lighting without any problems along the way. So do you see how that could add value?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, usually when they're arriving on a construction site or once they're out of our facility, the way the contracts are arranged, obviously we have skin in the game and we want them to get to the destination. But
Of course.
we haven't had any issues with stuff just not arriving. It's kind of hard for some of these large canopy lights to disappear.
No, of course, and that's, like I said, just the extra safety measure, but the quality control would be very beneficial within IQL so
Sure.
that your employees are making sure that everything is done so that once that liability is transferred to that third party, you knew that you did your job at IQL before it got shipped out.
Great.
Perfect. So, Brett, after everything we've spoke of today, I think that there are some risk exposures that IQL is currently facing
Of course.
and I want to get this moving as soon as possible. I know that your goal was July 1st for a renewal. I want to beat that for you, so would you feel comfortable signing today during this meeting?
I think, we need to look at a full proposal and so forth and so on, but I think you guys have a very comprehensive approach. And I think I definitely strongly consider working with you. But at the same time, I kind of want to look at what do we have, what are you proposing, put them side by side. But all things indicating that you're going to have a superior program. I don't know that I want to stray from our current renewal date because then you've got to deal with billing and refunds and all kinds of crap and certificates having to be reissued, yada yada yada. But I would love to proceed and I can't think of much right now that would stop me from making this switch given the professionalism and thoroughness you've shown.
Okay, perfect, Brett. And I do want to reemphasize that this is all tailored towards you. We really do care about you here at All American, and a lot of this, what it'll do is take that stress off your shoulder, and just you wanted to grow, and we want
That's
to
the
watch you
idea.
grow and be there with you. So why don't we get this going further? So are you available for a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m.?
I believe so. I'll check Dave at the front desk. He's got the master calendar. And if you check with him, I believe that's open. And if it is, he'll get you on and we'll circle back and get further down the road.
Okay, so I'll mark a tentative date on my calendar with you, send you an email right after this,
Great.
check with Dave, and then we'll get that meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Sound
All
good?
right. Sounds like a plan.
It
Perfect.
was great getting to meet you today.
Pleasure was all mine.
All right, thank you so much, Brett. Have a great day.
Looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, same tomorrow, 9 a.m.
That's it. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Hope you don't need more coffee.
I think that'd be a bad idea.
Too jittery.
There we go. Next one's done.
Indeed. Cooking with gas.
Yeah.